Today's topic is take your seat at the table. Asafu and I actually were talking about this as we were attempting to sort of build an agenda for the conversation. And I was really happy to get all of you as panelists because I feel like with your backgrounds, you've actually had an opportunity to sort of understand what the startup life is like. You understand all of the myths, all of the BS, all of the things that you were chasing early on, and in terms of understanding how do we go and get funding as soon as you get an idea, now it's time to go raise money. And you also understand the process of going through the work of building a sustainable business, finding revenue, finding customers. And so on that, I'm going to start with you, Roble. You in your book, you talk a lot about some of the very dismal numbers and startups in general. I'd love for you to just give a little bit of background on that, on how difficult it is to raise money, and then the value of building with a sustainable business model.
Thanks a lot, Rashad. And you know, the reason why I wrote that book is, you know, I built my tech startup, I think I started in 2013, and I was reading a lot of books that didn't relate to me. You know, there was all this networking, how to get to VCs and everything. So the reason I wrote this book is I thought the experience, especially for underrepresented people in tech, is completely different. And the rules to be successful is different. And that's why I really felt it was important to share my experience so other people can kind of piggy and benefit from that. But I would just say that I think, and it's difficult for everybody, whether you're white, whether you're black. The rates of securing VC funding is less than 1% for entrepreneurs. And it's also much more difficult, as we say, for underrepresented people. So I really feel there are tricks and trades of how to be attractive to VCs. And the further you are in your development, in your product development, if you're closer to revenue, that makes you more attractive. You know what I mean? But I think for underrepresented people, women and people who are underrepresented, I think it's very important to kind of understand the challenges, but also create a dual path where if you don't get funding, how are you able to bootstrap? So really honing your skills in bootstrapping so that you either get close to and you know, being able to be more attractive, either getting closer to revenue, and or if that's not happening, looking at alternative ways of funding, because I think we're very pigeonholed a lot of the times on VC is the only way to success. And I think there's a whole new movement, and I'm also part of this kind of Silicon Valley counterculture that's saying, hey, is this the only way we can build startups? And there have been a couple of very successful companies that have bootstrapped to billion-dollar valuations. And I'm talking about MailChimp and Atlassian in Australia. You know, MailChimp and started in Atlanta in the early 2000s, and they want a lot of VCs there. So they had to adapt to that environment and just bootstrap, and they were able to reach billion-dollar valuation. So I also really encourage people to think outside. Though I raised over $1 million outside of VCs, alternative funding. And there are those new models popping up now, Tiny Seed and others, which are more called patient capital and are not dependent on huge outcomes to be successful.
Dawn, I saw you shaking your head vigorously as he kind of went through that. I'd love for you to offer your thoughts on some of the things that Roble was saying.
Yeah, you know, I just have to second that. I think a lot of times the trap that we fall into as diverse and underrepresented founders is we're trying to follow this playbook that doesn't apply to us, right? And I think that it's really important that you understand the playbook, you understand how it's done typically, but you have to also understand that a lot of that stuff may not apply to you. So the biggest example that I point to is working full-time. How many of you have had someone tell you that, you know, they would fund you, but for the fact that you're not full-time yet? And here you are, you know, putting in the 10, 12 plus hours a day on your startup, plus making it work with a job. And that should be a superpower to that investor, but they don't see it that way because they're just kind of cultural barriers that, say to them, one thing is a pattern match for success and one thing isn't. And it's really incumbent upon us, right, to be able to have that sense of self and to know, all right, I got to feed my kids. I got to pay these student loans every month. So this is something that I have to do, but I can still be successful by kind of taking advantage of some of the maybe alternative routes that Roble mentioned. And there's a lot out there, There's revenue-based financing, there are pitch competitions, there are grants. I mean, the list goes on. And it's really our jobs rather than getting sucked into, looking for those traditional markers of success where I raised over $1 million in funding. That sounds really great to a lot of people. But would we rather, debt finance or revenue-based finance or do pitch competitions and get that money faster and easier while still keeping your, making sure that you're still in a good financial place?
See, absolutely. And I think one of the things that comes at the heart of this is, to some extent, I think there's sort of this startup belief that the first thing that you must do in order to have a successful business is to go and raise money, find a VC. And I think there's sort of this missing piece where we should be starting from, wait, what is it going to take for me to actually run a successful business? The success metric not being how much money you raise, but how well you get your business going. And Ehime, I'd love for you to sort of walk in on that. I feel like that's an alley-oop to you, because I know you've done a lot of alternative financing and quite a bit of bootstrapping. So can you talk a little bit about what it takes to sort of build a successful business?
I think that when you're starting out, I think that it's important, like you were just saying, that traditional way of just going to raise like a lot of money doesn't always work. I think that sometimes when you do that, you miss out on finding innovative and creative ways that you can structure your business. So for me, I started with like little money from my savings and then money from family and friends. And we were able to negotiate like deals by getting little things financed, like machines, little equipment that we needed just to kind of get going and get contracts with with grocery stores. And then when we finally landed a distributor, instead of waiting 30 days, 45 days, 60 days to get paid for orders, we could negotiate a payment in a week just by getting a discount on the invoice. So there are quicker ways that you can get your working capital to work for you. And not only that, we've been able to raise an angel round, and just basically by reaching out to your network and just seeing who believes in your vision. And one thing I tell people to do is always talk about what you're working on, because you never know who in your network is interested in what you're doing and who in your network believes in what you're doing. But if people don't know what you're doing, and you're not talking about it, you're not promoting it, you're not promoting yourself, it's very hard for them to buy in and want to invest their money into that. And catering was another thing that we did to ensure that we were getting a quick cash flow. So we started reaching out to all the apartment buildings and just saying, hey, even though the vision is to be in grocery stores across the US, we can use catering as a way to supplement our income and get quick cash to fund our business.
Aaron, I want you to come in on this, because here's the thing. What I heard Ehime say was, especially toward the end, which got me kind of excited, is, there's nothing wrong with like old school hustling. Like there's nothing wrong with actually going out there and trying to sell your products directly, or to create a service from what you're doing and figure out how you can get some money in the door by just doing old school hustling. Same thing with what Dawn was saying, when she's like, no, keep your job, work full time, and keep this business that you're trying to build and work full time as well. Your thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's kind of like the old school way of getting stuff done. For those who go all the way back and remember with the lean startup, I mean, even in that book, one of the things that he talks about when first starting out is the white glove approach to your product, which is basically not this rush to build something, but to find some other service or some way to kind of manually work through the process to get clients on board, validate your assumptions, and generate revenue. And I think that Dawn mentioned this earlier. It's like, well, there's two things. A, the topic here is about getting a seat at the table. I think A, it's like, yeah, we might want a seat there, but are there some other tables that we can set ourselves that we can be part of? And B, we've really got to, get off this narrative of, like you said, Rashad, and also Dawn, how do I raise money, right? That seems to be the thing that everyone is so focused on, is like raising money instead of getting clients or getting customers to actually start to pay, which will not only help offset some of your costs, but validate your concept and help you end up with a better product.